The sound of metal crushing against metal echoed through the quiet evening air, followed by the horrifying screech of tires skidding across wet asphalt. David's hands gripped the steering wheel, tighter as his heart hammered against his chest. He had just picked up his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, from her art class, and they were heading home through the winding roads of their small town when the accident happened, right before their eyes. A silver sedan had lost control on the rain-slicked road, spinning violently before slamming into the concrete barrier with a sickening crunch that made David's stomach drop. Before we continue with this heart-stopping story, if you're new to Kindness True Stories, welcome to our family. We share real-life stories of compassion, courage, and the beautiful connections that change lives forever. Please hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, and share this video with someone who needs to hear an inspiring story today. Your support helps us continue bringing these powerful stories to life. Now let's get back to David's incredible journey. David didn't think. He didn't hesitate. Years of being a single father had taught him to act fast in emergencies, whether it was catching Emma before she fell off the playground equipment or rushing her to the hospital when she had that terrible fever last winter. His protective instincts kicked in immediately. He pulled his truck over to the side of the road, tires crunching on gravel, and turned to Emma with the most reassuring smile he could manage despite the fear coursing through his veins. "Stay here, sweetheart. Lock the doors. Daddy will be right back." Emma's wide brown eyes, so much like her late mother's, stared at him with worry, but she nodded obediently. She had learned to trust her father completely in the 3 years since they had lost Sarah to cancer. The rain was coming down harder now, cold drops pelting David's face as he sprinted toward the mangled vehicle. Other cars had stopped, their hazard lights blinking like worried eyes in the growing darkness. But no one else was moving toward the wreckage. Fear paralyzed them, or perhaps they were already calling for help. David couldn't wait for ambulances or fire trucks. Something deep in his gut told him that every second mattered. As he approached the sedan, his construction worker's boots splashing through puddles, he could see the front end was completely crushed. Accordion folded like paper. Steam hissed from the broken radiator, and the smell of gasoline made his throat tighten with fear. The driver's side was pressed against the barrier, but he could see someone in the passenger seat. A young woman slumped forward, held by her seatbelt, dark hair covering her face. Blood trickled down her temple, stark red against pale skin. "Miss, can you hear me?" David shouted, trying the passenger door. It was jammed, bent from the impact. He pulled harder, his muscles straining. The same muscles he used every day lifting steel beams and concrete blocks at construction sites. The door groaned but didn't budge. The gasoline smell was getting stronger. His mind raced through worst-case scenarios, each one more terrifying than the last. He had to get her out now. He ran back to his truck, his work boots pounding the pavement, and grabbed the crowbar he kept in his toolkit. Emma watched him through the window, her small hands pressed against the glass, her breath fogging it up. He gave her a quick thumbs up, hoping it would calm her racing heart. Then he was back at the wreck, wedging the crowbar into the doorframe. He leveraged all his weight, all his strength, thinking about Emma waiting in the truck, thinking about how Sarah would have wanted him to help, thinking about how this woman deserved to see another sunrise. The door finally gave way with a metallic shriek that cut through the rain. David tossed the crowbar aside and leaned into the vehicle. The woman was breathing, but it was shallow and labored. She was young, maybe late 20s, wearing business attire now soaked with rain and spotted with blood. An overturned briefcase lay at her feet, papers scattered across the floorboard. "I've got you," David said softly, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. "You're going to be okay." He reached across her to unbuckle the seatbelt, his hands shaking slightly. The buckle was stuck, probably damaged in the crash. He worked it carefully, aware that moving her could cause more injury, but knowing that staying in a vehicle leaking gasoline was far more dangerous. Finally, the buckle released with a click that sounded like victory. He carefully supported her head and neck, the way he had learned in the first aid course he took after Emma was born. back when he was a nervous new father, determined to be prepared for anything. "Sir, the ambulance is on the way," someone shouted from behind him. David nodded but didn't stop. He gently lifted the woman from the seat, cradling her against his chest. She was lighter than he expected, fragile in his arms. Her eyes fluttered open for just a moment, unfocused and confused, the color of stormy seas. She tried to say something, her lips moving, but no sound came out. "Shh, don't try to talk. I've got you. You're safe now," David murmured, the same tone he used when Emma woke up from nightmares. He carried her away from the vehicle, his boots squishing in the muddy grass alongside the road. 20 feet, 30 feet. He wanted to get her as far from that gasoline smell as possible. Other people had emerged from their cars now, some filming on their phones, others offering blankets and water. An older woman rushed forward with an umbrella, trying to shield them from the rain. David carefully lowered the injured woman onto the grass, supporting her head, checking her breathing. It was steadier now, stronger. "What's your name?" he asked gently, hoping to keep her conscious. Her eyes opened again, clearer this time, focusing on his face. "Maya," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. Maya Chen, tears mixed with the rain on her cheeks. "My car. I lost control. I thought—" David squeezed her hand gently. "You're okay now, Maya. Help is coming." "I'm David. You're going to be just fine." She gripped his hand with surprising strength, as if he were her anchor in a stormy sea. The sound of sirens finally pierced the air, growing louder with each passing second. David looked back at his truck and saw Emma still watching, her face pressed against the window. He waved at her and she waved back, a small smile breaking through her worried expression. He had taught her about helping others, about being brave, about being kind even when it was hard. Today, she was learning that lesson in the most profound way possible. The paramedics arrived in a flurry of activity, their practiced efficiency taking over. They asked David questions while they worked on Maya, checking her vitals, stabilizing her neck, preparing her for transport. He answered everything he could, feeling suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline began to fade. One paramedic, a kind-faced woman with gray streaks in her hair, touched his shoulder. "You saved her life. If you hadn't gotten her out of that vehicle..." She didn't finish the sentence, but David understood. He glanced back at the wreck and saw what she meant. Firefighters were now spraying foam on the vehicle, containing the gasoline leak that could have turned tragic at any moment. As they loaded Maya into the ambulance, her eyes found David's one more time. She mouthed something that looked like "thank you," and he nodded, feeling a strange connection to this stranger whose life had intersected with his in such a dramatic way. The ambulance doors closed, and the vehicle pulled away, sirens wailing into the darkening evening. David stood there in the rain for a long moment, watching it disappear, before finally walking back to his truck and his waiting daughter. Emma unlocked the door as soon as David reached the truck, and before he could even climb in, she threw her arms around his waist, hugging him with all the strength her small body could muster. "Daddy, you were so brave," she whispered against his wet shirt, her voice muffled but filled with pride and relief. David's heart swelled as he wrapped his arms around her, holding her close, feeling the warmth of her small body against his rain-soaked clothes. "I just did what anyone would do." "Sweetheart," he said softly, though his voice cracked slightly with emotion. Emma pulled back and looked up at him with those serious brown eyes that always seemed too wise for a 7-year-old. "No, Daddy, not everyone would run toward the scary thing. You always run toward it, just like you did when Mommy was sick." The words hit David harder than he expected, and he had to blink back, tears that had nothing to do with the rain still streaming down his face. They drove home in comfortable silence, Emma's small hand holding his larger one over the center console, a gesture that had become their unspoken language of love and reassurance. The radio played softly, some country song about small-town heroes, and David couldn't help but think about Maya's frightened eyes and her whispered name. He wondered if she had family waiting for her somewhere, worried sick because she hadn't come home. He wondered if she lived alone, like he did with Emma, navigating life's challenges with courage and determination. The questions swirled in his mind as streetlights began flickering on, casting golden pools of light across the wet streets of their neighborhood. When they pulled into the driveway of their modest two-bedroom house, the porch light was on, welcoming them home the way it did every evening. David had installed a timer after. Sarah died because coming home to a dark house felt too lonely, too much like a metaphor for the emptiness she had left behind. Inside, the house smelled like the cinnamon candles Sarah used to love, which David still bought even though Emma said they made her sneeze sometimes. He helped Emma out of her rain-soaked jacket and sent her upstairs to change into warm pajamas while he peeled off his own wet clothes in the laundry room, his hands still shaking slightly from the adrenaline crash. By the time Emma came back downstairs in her favorite purple pajamas with the unicorns on them, David had changed into dry sweatpants and an old college t-shirt, and he was pulling ingredients from the refrigerator for grilled cheese sandwiches. Their traditional comfort food dinner. Emma climbed onto her usual stool at the kitchen counter, swinging her legs and watching him with that intense focus she always had when something was on her mind. "Daddy, do you think that lady is okay?" she asked, as David buttered bread and laid slices of cheese between them. "I hope so, baby. The paramedics will take good care of her at the hospital," he replied, placing the sandwiches in the hot skillet, where they began to sizzle and fill the kitchen with that perfect grilled cheese aroma. Emma was quiet for a moment, then said something that made David's hands pause over the stove. "I think Mommy would be proud of you today. I think she's watching from heaven and smiling." David turned to look at his daughter, this incredible little person who had inherited Sarah's compassion and kindness along with her eyes, and he felt his throat tighten with emotion. "You know what, Emma? I think she'd be proud of you too. You were very brave sitting in that truck, staying calm and trusting me. That took real courage." Emma's face lit up with the brightest smile. And in that moment, David felt like maybe, just maybe, he was doing this single parenting thing right. They ate their grilled cheese sandwiches at the kitchen table, dipping them in tomato soup the way Sarah had taught them. And Emma chattered about her art class and the painting she was making of their family, which now included their golden retriever, Max, who had died last year but who, Emma insisted, still counted as family, because love doesn't stop when someone goes to heaven. After dinner, bath time, and 3 bedtime stories, David finally tucked Emma into bed, kissing her forehead and turning on her nightlight that projected stars across her ceiling. "Sweet dreams, princess," he whispered, and she mumbled back, already half asleep, "You're my hero, Daddy." He stood in her doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe, grateful beyond words that she was safe and warm and loved. Then he went downstairs, poured himself a glass of water, and sat on the couch in the quiet house, finally allowing himself to think about everything that had happened. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out to see several missed calls from his mother and text messages from his sister asking if he was the guy in the accident videos that were apparently circulating on social media. David sighed, scrolling through Facebook to find that yes, someone had filmed him pulling Maya from the car, and the video had been shared hundreds of times with captions calling him a hero. He felt uncomfortable with the attention, with people he barely knew leaving comments praising him. He wasn't a hero. He was just a dad who did what needed to be done, the same way he faced every challenge life threw at him since Sarah died. 3 days passed, and David fell back into his routine of early morning construction work, afternoon pickups from school, homework help, dinner preparation, and bedtime rituals. But he couldn't stop thinking about Maya. He wondered if she had recovered, if her injuries were serious, if she remembered him at all. He had called the hospital the day after the accident, but they wouldn't give him any information due to privacy laws, would only confirm that a patient by that name was in stable condition. It should have been enough to ease his mind, but somehow it wasn't. He felt connected to her in a way he couldn't quite explain, as if pulling her from that wreckage had created an invisible thread between their lives. On Thursday afternoon, David was at the construction site, hammering support beams into place on the new community center they were building. when his boss, Tommy, called him over. "Hey, David, there's someone here to see you," Tommy said with a strange smile on his weathered face. David wiped the sweat from his forehead, confused, because no one ever visited him at work, except occasionally. Emma's school, if there was an emergency. He climbed down from the scaffolding, his boots crunching on gravel, and walked toward the site office trailer. That's when he saw her. Maya Chen stood next to a silver car that was clearly a rental, wearing jeans and a soft blue sweater, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She had a bandage on her temple, and her left arm was in a sling. But she was standing smiling, alive. David's breath caught in his throat as their eyes met, and he saw that hers were filling with tears. "I had to find you," Maya said. Her voice, stronger than it had been that rainy night, but still trembling with emotion. "I had to thank you properly. You saved my life, David." She said his name like it meant something profound, like it was a word worth remembering forever. David walked toward her, suddenly aware of how dirty he was from work, covered in sawdust and sweat. But Maya didn't seem to notice or care. She stepped forward and, with her good arm, reached out and took his hand, the same way she had gripped it on that rain-soaked roadside. "How did you find me?" David asked, his voice rough with surprise and something else he couldn't quite name. Maya smiled through her tears. "It took some detective work. Someone posted a video of the rescue online, and people in the comments knew you worked construction. I called every construction company in town until I found the right one. I couldn't rest until I found you, until I could look you in the eyes and say thank you." They stood there in the afternoon sun, construction noise echoing around them, workers pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. And David realized that this moment felt significant in a way that had nothing to do with heroics or dramatic rescues. This felt like the beginning of something, though what exactly he couldn't say. "You don't have to thank me," he said quietly. "I'm just glad you're okay." "How are you healing?" Maya touched the bandage on her temple self-consciously. "Concussion, broken collarbone, some bruised ribs. The doctor said I was incredibly lucky. They said if I'd stayed in that car even a minute longer." She trailed off, and David saw her shiver despite the warm afternoon. "Would you like to grab some coffee?" Maya asked suddenly, her cheeks flushing slightly. "I mean, after you finish work, if you have time. I'd really like to hear about the man who ran toward danger instead of away from it." David hesitated, thinking about Emma, about his responsibilities, about how he hadn't had coffee with a woman who wasn't a relative or co-worker since Sarah died. But something in Maya's hopeful expression, something in the way she looked at him like he was someone worth knowing, made him nod. "I finish at 5. There's a diner called Rosie's about 2 blocks from here. Best coffee in town, and they make a mean slice of apple." "Bye." Maya's smile brightened, her entire face. "It's a date. I mean, not a date, just a coffee meeting thing." She laughed nervously, and David found himself laughing too, the sound feeling rusty but good. David spent the last hour of his shift trying to focus on his work, but his mind kept drifting to the woman waiting for him at Rosie's diner. He hammered nails with less precision than usual, earning a concerned look from Tommy, who eventually pulled him aside and said, "Go on, get out of here early. Clean yourself up. That young lady didn't track you down just to see you covered in sawdust." David felt his ears burn with embarrassment, but he was grateful. He rushed to his truck, used the clean shirt he always kept in his back seat for Emma's school events, and tried to make himself presentable using the rearview mirror and some wet wipes from the glove compartment. It was the best he could do under the circumstances. When David walked into Rosie's diner at 4:45, Maya was already there, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee steaming on the table. She had clearly been watching the door, because her face lit up the moment she saw him, and she waved him over with her good arm. The diner was one of those timeless places with red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floors, and a jukebox in the corner that still played songs from the 50s. David had been coming here since he was a kid, and the familiarity of it helped calm his unexpected nervousness. "I hope you don't mind that I ordered for us," Maya said as he slid into the booth across from her. "I didn't know how you take your coffee, so I got cream and sugar on the side." David smiled. adding just a splash of cream to his cup. "This is perfect, thank you." For a moment they both sipped their coffee in silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. Maya traced the rim of her cup with her finger, and David noticed she wore a simple silver ring on her right hand, but none on her left. Finally, Maya took a deep breath and began to speak, her voice soft but steady. "I need to tell you what happened that night, why I lost control of the car. I think I owe you that. Much." David started to protest that she didn't owe him anything, but she held up her hand gently. "Please, let me say this. I need to." Maya's story poured out like water breaking through a dam. She had been driving home from the worst day of her professional life. She was a social worker specializing in child welfare cases, and that afternoon she had lost a case that meant everything to her. A little boy she had been fighting to remove from a dangerous home environment had been sent back to his parents due to a technicality in the legal system. "I knew he wasn't safe there," Maya said, her voice cracking with emotion. "I knew it in my bones, but my hands were tied. I left the courthouse feeling like I had failed him, failed at the one job that mattered to me more than anything else in the world." She had been crying while driving, wiping tears from her eyes, not paying close enough attention to the wet roads. When a deer jumped out in front of her car, she swerved instinctively and lost control. "I remember the impact," Maya continued, her good hand gripping her coffee cup tightly. "I remember thinking this was it. This was how I was going to die, alone and having failed the people who needed me most." And then she looked up at David with those storm-gray eyes now shimmering with tears. "And then I heard your voice, strong and calm and telling me I was going to be okay." I held on to that voice like a lifeline, even when I was drifting in and out of consciousness in the ambulance, in the hospital. I kept hearing you say, "I've got you." Those 3 words meant everything. David felt his own eyes sting with emotion. He reached across the table without thinking and covered her hand with his. "You didn't fail that little boy," he said firmly. "You fought for him. Sometimes we do everything right and the system still fails us. But that doesn't mean we stop fighting. That doesn't mean we stop caring." Maya stared at him in surprise, a tear rolling down her cheek. "How do you know exactly what I needed to hear?" she whispered. David smiled sadly. "Because I've been there. Different circumstances, but the same feeling of helplessness. When my wife Sarah was dying of cancer, I felt like I was failing her every single day. I couldn't fix it, couldn't make it better, couldn't save her no matter how hard I tried." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. David hadn't talked about Sarah with anyone outside of family and grief counseling in over a year, but barely old enough to understand what was happening. Being a single dad, raising a daughter without her mother, trying to be enough for her when I feel like half of me is missing. Some days I still don't know if I'm doing it right. Maya's expression softened with understanding and compassion. "The fact that you worry about doing it right means you probably are," she said gently. "And from what I could see that night, even in those terrifying moments, you thought about your daughter first. You made sure she was safe before you helped me. That's not just good parenting, David, that's exceptional parenting." Her words wrapped around his heart, like a warm blanket, soothing wounds he hadn't realized were still so tender. They talked for over an hour, their coffee growing cold and being refilled by Rosie herself, who knew David well enough to sense that something important was happening in that corner booth. Maya told him about growing up as the daughter of immigrants who had sacrificed everything to give her opportunities, about her passion for helping vulnerable children, about the loneliness of working a job that demanded so much emotional energy that she had little left for her own life. David shared stories about Emma's quirky personality, about learning to braid hair from YouTube videos, about the terror and joy of raising a daughter who was growing up faster than he was ready for. They discovered they both loved old movies, that they both found peace in rainy days, that they both believed in the fundamental goodness of people even when the world tried to prove otherwise. "I should let you go," Maya finally said as the dinner rush began filling the diner around them. "You probably need to pick up Emma." David glanced at his watch. and was shocked to see it was already 6:30. His mother had picked Emma up from aftercare as planned, but he had told her he'd be home by 7. Yeah, I should go, he agreed, but neither of them moved to leave. They sat there looking at each other, and David felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. A flutter of possibility, of connection, of hope that maybe his heart wasn't completely broken after all. "Can I see you again?" Maya asked, her voice uncertain but hopeful. "I mean, I'd really like to get to know you better if that's okay. Maybe meet Emma sometime, if you're comfortable with that." David felt his heart skip a beat. The protective father in him wanted to be cautious, to keep his daughter's world stable and safe from potential hurt. But the man in him, the part that had been lonely for so long, wanted to say yes with every fiber of his being. "I'd like that," he said carefully. "But I need to take things slow for Emma's sake. She's been through so much. And I can't bring someone into her life unless—" "I'm sure." Maya nodded immediately, her expression understanding. "Of course. I would never want to disrupt her sense of security. We can be friends first. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who met under extraordinary circumstances, getting to know each other." They exchanged phone numbers, and David walked Maya to her rental car, the evening air warm and filled with the sound of crickets, beginning their nightly chorus. Before she got in the car, Maya turned and hugged him with her good arm, a brief embrace that somehow conveyed gratitude and connection and the promise of something more. "Thank you again, David, for saving my life and for sharing coffee with me and for being exactly the kind of person this world needs more of." David felt his cheeks flush. "Drive carefully," he said, his protective instincts kicking in. "Text me when you get home so I know you made it safely." Maya smiled, a beautiful, genuine smile that made her eyes crinkle at the corners. "I will. Good night, David." He watched her drive away, her taillights disappearing into the twilight, and felt something shift in his chest. Like a door he thought was permanently closed had just opened a crack, letting in the smallest ray of light. When David got home, his mother was helping Emma with a puzzle at the dining room table. "Daddy!" Emma jumped up and ran to him, and he scooped her up in his arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "How was your afternoon with Grandma?" he asked, and Emma launched into an enthusiastic description of the cookies they had baked and the cartoons they had watched. His mother gave him a knowing look over Emma's head, her eyebrows raised in question. David just smiled and shrugged, not ready to put words to what he was feeling yet. After his mother left, and Emma was settled with her homework, David's phone buzzed with a text message. "Made it home safely. Thank you for the coffee and conversation. Today was a good day." David stared at the message, his thumb hovering over the keyboard, trying to figure out how to respond in a way that was friendly but not too eager, interested but not too forward. Finally he typed, "I'm glad you're safe. Today was a good day for me too. Sleep well, Maya." Her response came almost immediately, just a simple smiley face emoji, but it made David grin like a teenager with his first crush. That night, after tucking Emma into bed and finishing the mountain of laundry that never seemed to end, David sat on his back porch with a beer he didn't drink, looking up at the stars scattered across the dark sky. He thought about fate and coincidence and how sometimes the worst moments lead to the most unexpected blessings. He thought about Sarah and how she had made him promise in those final weeks that he would live fully, that he would open his heart again, that he wouldn't let grief turn him into a ghost. "I think I might be ready," he whispered to the stars, to Sarah's memory, to the universe that had brought Maya crashing into his life. "I think I might be ready to try again." Over the next few weeks, David and Maya's friendship blossomed in the most natural and unexpected way. They texted each other daily, sharing small moments from their lives, funny stories about work, and gradually deeper conversations about their fears and dreams. Maya sent Emma a get-well care package when she caught a cold, filled with coloring books and hot chocolate packets, which made Emma's eyes light up with delight. "Daddy, I like your new friend," Emma announced one evening while they were making dinner together. "She's really nice. Can we invite her over sometime?" David's heart swelled at his daughter's acceptance. He had been worried about how Emma would react to someone new, entering their carefully balanced world. But his little girl's open heart reminded him that children often understood love better than adults did. That weekend, Maya came over for lunch, bringing homemade cookies and a shy smile. David watched nervously as Emma showed Maya her room, her artwork, her collection of stuffed animals, chattering away without any trace of hesitation. Maya listened to every word with genuine interest, asking questions and laughing at Emma's jokes, treating her not like a child to tolerate, but like a person worth knowing. They spent the afternoon in the backyard, Emma playing with bubbles while David and Maya sat on the porch steps, their shoulders almost touching. "She's incredible," Maya said softly, watching Emma chase iridescent bubbles across the grass. "You've raised an amazing little girl." David, he felt tears prick his eyes unexpectedly. "I had a good teacher," he replied, thinking of Sarah, "and I think Emma needed this, needed to see that our family can grow, that letting new people in doesn't mean forgetting the people we've lost." Maya turned to look at him, understanding shining in those storm-gray eyes. "I'm honored to be let in," she whispered. 6 months later, David stood in that same backyard, now decorated with fairy lights and flowers, watching Emma dance with Maya at their small engagement party. His mother was crying happy tears. His friends from the construction site were manning the grill, and Maya's parents were laughing with his sister over something Emma had just said. Life had transformed in ways David never could have imagined. That rainy night when he pulled a stranger from a wrecked car, he had saved Maya's life, but in so many ways she had saved his too, reminding him that hearts can heal, that love can be found again, that courage means opening yourself up to possibility even when you're terrified. Emma ran over to him, breathless and grinning. "Daddy, are you happy?" she asked, tugging on his hand. David looked at his daughter, at Maya walking toward them with that beautiful smile, at the life they were building together, and felt gratitude wash over him like warm rain. "Yeah, baby," he said, lifting Emma into his arms. "I'm really happy." Maya joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and in that perfect moment, David knew that sometimes the worst accidents lead to the most beautiful destinations. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Kindness. True stories for more inspiring real-life stories of compassion, courage, and unexpected connections. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling us what moment moved you most, and share this video with someone who needs hope today. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful stories of human kindness. Remember, heroes aren't born. They're made in moments when ordinary people choose extraordinary courage. Thank you for being part of our community. They spent the afternoon in the backyard, Emma playing with bubbles while David and Maya sat on the porch steps, their shoulders almost touching. "She's incredible," Maya said softly, watching Emma chase iridescent bubbles across the grass. "You've raised an amazing little girl." David, he felt tears prick his eyes unexpectedly. "I had a good teacher," he replied, thinking of Sarah, "and I think Emma needed this, needed to see that our family can grow, that letting new people in doesn't mean forgetting the people we've lost." Maya turned to look at him, understanding shining in those storm-gray eyes. "I'm honored to be let in," she whispered. 6 months later, David stood in that same backyard, now decorated with fairy lights and flowers, watching Emma dance with Maya at their small engagement party. His mother was crying happy tears. His friends from the construction site were manning the grill, and Maya's parents were laughing with his sister over something Emma had just said. Life had transformed in ways David never could have imagined. That rainy night when he pulled a stranger from a wrecked car, he had saved Maya's life, but in so many ways she had saved his too, reminding him that hearts can heal, that love can be found again, that courage means opening yourself up to possibility even when you're terrified. Emma ran over to him, breathless and grinning. "Daddy, are you happy?" she asked, tugging on his hand. David looked at his daughter, at Maya walking toward them with that beautiful smile, at the life they were building together, and felt gratitude wash over him like warm rain. "Yeah, baby," he said, lifting Emma into his arms. "I'm really happy." Maya joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them. And in that perfect moment, David knew that sometimes the worst accidents lead to the most beautiful destinations. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Kindness. True Stories for more inspiring real-life stories of compassion, courage, and unexpected connections. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling us what moment moved you most, and share this video with someone who needs hope today. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful stories of human kindness. Remember, heroes aren't born. They're made in moments when ordinary people choose extraordinary courage. Thank you for being part of our community.